Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I noticed that IL-2 also has an I-16, so I wanted to do a little comparison while this is still on the free-for-all free play, which is ending here in a couple days, but I wanted to look at this thing again in DCS and then take a look at it in IL-2 to kind of give you an idea of how they compare. So when looking at it in DCS, let's see what kind of content we get with it. So if we go to instant action, we choose, where is it? The I-16. Looks like we got about 6 missions for the default map, none for Nevada, none for Normandy, and none for the Persian Gulf. In terms of missions, under the mission heading, we have nothing. And campaigns. Yeah, really nothing. Zoom. That was rather quick. Let's take a look around the cockpit real quick while I have things actively paused. The cockpit detail really is unmatched by anything else. This looks fantastic. The reticle is very crisp and clear. You can actually see it very well. The textures and the detail pretty much everywhere in this is just fantastic. I know I'm actively paused in the dogfight scenario, so I got a 109 zipping past me here. Stick moves around in the cockpit rather well. The pedals are what they are. The throttle, look at that, it's got like a little wooden handle on the throttle. Pretty cool. All the cables. Definitely a very impressive cockpit. I'm going to wait for this guy to zip past me one more time, then I'm going to go out of active pause here, like now. So the weird thing is, this is like an open cockpit plane. That's why it's so noisy in the cockpit. And I'm definitely not that good in this thing. This 109's just zipping around me and running circles around me pretty much. Uh-oh. Ah. So in DCS, the Warbird performance is really unforgiving. On right into the... There we go. Into the sun, to where I couldn't see. But I still managed to get a shot in on him. So I would have to say, in terms of realism and flight model performance, DCS really does get the nod in that direction. They do things just a bit better than what IL-2 does. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with IL-2 either. There we go, a couple more shots. And I think the other thing is, you'll notice is the damage modeling in DCS for the warbirds in the current state pretty much sucks. In IL-2, they just updated their damage model, and it's really way more impressive with the warbird stuff. It just takes forever to kill a warbird in DCS, it seems. Although, there we go. He's going in. Fantastic. Mission complete. Real nice visuals of the guns firing. And the texture detail is really well done. Definitely. Look at the wear and tear of the paint being worn away around that radial engine. And one of the things I like in DCS is they really pay attention to detail. If you notice right here, that looks like the area where the pilot would step up and get into the cockpit is worn right there on that wing, where the wing meets the fuselage. Yet on this side, not so much, because they probably get in on this side. It's the little details that you seem to find paid more attention to in the DCS aircraft versus the IL-2 ones. And again, I'm not going to say the IL-2 ones look bad or they don't pay attention to detail either, but it's a very different artistic style. It's definitely a really cool little plane. It's really just a short, stubby plane with some short wings, big fat radial engine, some guns, and you can go in and do some air-to-ground stuff in it too. It's pretty fun in the air-to-ground role as well. Alrighty, here we are in IL-2 looking at the I-16 Type 24. This is the IL-2 version of the I-16, and as you look at it, it looks pretty damn impressive. The texture detail is very well done. It's different than what you've got in DCS, but I can't say that it looks bad by any means. It's just a very different art style. And one of the things to note is with the next update, they're changing the renderer that they're using to render stuff in the simulation. So I'm really curious to see how different or better or worse things may end up looking. But I like that they have these little wear and tear details, and right here where the pilot kind of steps up in and out of the cockpit. I had mentioned when I looked at the I-16 and DCS that, you know, how they always put those little marks right here, and how I never saw it in IL-2, but this is the first time I've actually seen it in IL-2 where they do that same thing. And when you look at this side, it's not so much, and it's because the pilot likely gets in on this side. So it's pretty cool that they've done that. I really like the attention to detail. And I think what it is this is I believe a Battle of Moscow aircraft. So it's later. It's you know, Battle of Stalingrad was kind of the first great battles. Moscow was next, then Kuban, then Baden-Platte, and then, you know, soon to be, I want to say Normandy or whatever the next one is that they're working on. But I guess my point is, as they put out new products, they really up their game a little bit when it comes to the IL-2 stuff. Let's take a look at the different paint schemes that we have in IL-2. White. White splash. I like how the weathering kind of stays in place no matter what paint scheme that you choose. I never noticed that until just now, until I really wanted to take a detailed look at something in here, you know? Do a comparison between this and DCS. And there's a few different skins in DCS as well. That's one thing I skipped that I didn't show you. But that's not quite as important to me. It's more of, hey, you got this, but I think the skins that they offer here are definitely better than the ones that they have in DCS. A nicer little variety, I would have to say. And then you also have the ability in IL-2, when you jump in to start out is you have usually some different little options to modify your aircraft. So if I wanted to, I can choose some rockets, I can choose some bombs, I could take the one-piece windscreen, I could take the different guns, and I could run with all of that. Let's jump in and take a look. Now their cockpit actually looks a little cleaner. Almost like, aside from the weathering details on these edges here, it almost looks cleaner, almost like a brand new aircraft. It's really noisy because it's an open cockpit, and that's one thing. Let me pause this. That's one thing that I'm noticing is that in IL-2, the audible effects are definitely heavier in terms of, you know, the wind hitting you and being in an open cockpit versus what it was in DCS. That's another thing I just noticed between the two. But as you look around the cockpit, you're going to find it looks really good, but the DCS one definitely looks better. Notice here how the handle is like black. It looks almost like a black plastic versus the wooden handle that you had in the cockpit of the DCS one. Pedals look different too. But again, this is a I-16 Type 24, so I'm not sure exactly what version they modeled in DCS. It's just called the I-16, I believe. So this might just be a later model with different modifications to it, possibly. And here's the gear and pulleys that is modeled in the cockpit. And if you look at the DCS version, it definitely looks more realistic. But again, I'm not saying they didn't do a good job in this, because these cables don't really look real to me. They look hand-drawn. Yet they really did a good job of their weathering in the details in the cockpit here. But again, it almost looks like they took what was like a brand new cockpit and then just weathered it up. And again, it's not a bad thing. There's nothing bad looking about this cockpit. It's just that DCS does a better job in terms of cockpit details. And not to mention, you can't click anything in this cockpit. In DCS, all their cockpits of high fidelity modules are usually fully clickable. So that's one thing that DCS also has over IL-2. I actually hit something. How about that? Let's pause it again. Now let's take a look at the exterior details of the model in action here. Definitely a nice model. Notice they did a lot of weathering, which is really nice. I want to say when you look at it in the hangar in IL-2, things look like it looks like they showcase the model and the texturing better when you're in the hangar of IL-2, because they have complete control of that lighting to highlight it. Everything looks shinier in the hangar versus in the game. Again, not a bad thing, just an observation. Definitely great textures here, but IL-2 in DCS, or not IL-2, the I-16 that is in DCS definitely has a more photorealistic look. In IL-2 here in Great Battles, it definitely has a more hand-drawn look. But again, it's not a bad thing, it's just a different art style. I'm going to hit the pause. There's something different going on here too. I don't know what that shaking is, unless they're shooting anti-aircraft guns at me, which they could be. I never noticed that effect in IL-2 before. But as you see, it's definitely noisier in the I-16 cockpit, and I'll give them credit that that seems like a good nod for realism, because it definitely seems more realistic and helps immerse you into the cockpit more by feeling like you're in an open cockpit environment. And the other thing is this reticle in here, it kind of comes and goes, you know what I mean, in terms of how illuminated it is right there. In DCS, it's more consistent. So I'm going to have to give them DCS the nod in that direction too. And one more observation too, between DCS and IL-2. In IL-2, you have the ability to bring up this map, and yeah, you can bring up kneeboards in DCS, I guess, but on these maps you can actually, I guess, cheat a little bit, and you can see that, you know, hey, there's some trucks up ahead. Gives me kind of a on the spot of where all my ground targets are, which is a little more helpful, and personally I think it's more fun. I know that people love simulations for the realism, and when you want the utmost hardcore realism, that's where DCS has it over IL-2 in terms of the flight modeling, in terms of just, you know, not having any aids whatsoever. You can turn off aids in this too, but IL-2 is more user-friendly, I want to say, overall, and it makes for a much more enjoyable, at least for me, a much more enjoyable, accessible experience, I think. This is going to be the other big one, going in IL-2's favor. So DCS looks more photorealistic. The terrain looks better in DCS. With that being the case, and the engine that they use, performance-wise, DCS is far more taxing. As you can see right here now, looking in the top right-hand corner of the screen, I'm pretty much at a consistent 143, 144 FPS. It might drop down to, you know, low hundreds at some points, but I'm running at a widescreen resolution, and I have all the details cranked using what they call the 4K textures in IL-2, and performance-wise, it's fantastic. In VR, IL-2, I usually get a consistent, usually no less than, like, at the very least, I might have dropped to 39 once in a while, but that's at the worst case scenario in VR. And I've hit, like, you know, as high as 79, 80, you know, it's between 60-ish, I'm guessing, is probably my average in IL-2 in VR, which is really good. In DCS, God, you're talking 20 FPS at the worst case scenarios, and it's very painful and stuttery and shows. At the best case scenario, you're going to be lucky to hit 40 to 45 FPS in DCS and VR. So that's another nod for IL-2. in terms of performance in this aircraft. So overall, between the DCS implementation of the I-16 and the IL-2 Great Battles implementation of the I-16, I would have to give it to DCS for the visuals and for the realism level. It's definitely a lot more unforgiving to fly it, and I tend to find myself losing it more in the DCS version versus the IL-2 version. So if you want the utmost realism, the DCS I-16 is going to be it. It really is. It's that good. However, in terms of accessibility, pure fun factor, performance, and still with fantastic visuals, the IL-2 Great Battles version from the Battle of Moscow is definitely every bit as fun as what somebody would hope for from the I-16 in the game. I did a video the other day in VR of the escort mission where I had to escort some IL-2s in the I-16. It was just great fun. It really was. I'm definitely starting to like this plane. And let's talk price. Battle of Moscow on sale at 75% off, which they do damn near all the time, is like $12.50. The DCS I-16, I want to say it's like $40 when it's not on sale, and either $19.99 or $24.99 when it is on sale. So cost-wise, it looks like IL-2 is the clear winner too. But again, they are different things, so it depends on what you're looking for more than anything. Man, if you just want the absolute best visuals and you want the most realistic implementation of any of the warbirds, DCS usually has it. IL-2 is just far more accessible and damn good flight modeling, way better damage modeling. And that's the other thing I gotta say is IL-2 definitely has it in damage modeling. There's a pure satisfaction and just, you know, reward when you're shooting planes in IL-2 and you see the parts fly off the way they do, or you see different colored smoke depicting different forms of damage, you know, hydraulic or fuel or whatever, you know. It's definitely far more detailed. And I'm not going to say that DCS isn't working on that, because they are, but in one of the last patches for the Great Battles series for IL-2, they upped their game in the damage modeling, and it really is in-depth, detailed, and there's a lot more things that can happen. Cool stuff overall is what it comes down to. And just, you know, for the pure fun factor, the IL-2 stuff seems to be where it's at, and they do have the lockdown on that World War II genre. DCS, though, I mean, they have beautiful planes, far more realistically modeled. They have better terrain, but the performance is what kills it for me there. If you want to do VR, man, it's just bad right now. It really is. And IL-2, like, you know, performance-wise, it just blows DCS away, man. If you've got a mid-range system and you want to enjoy some warbird flight simulation, it's very hard to recommend DCS. Even in non-VR, you know what I mean? The performance, you know, you really got to turn some stuff down. IL-2, you can jump in there and just go. And even on a mid-range system with a mid-range GPU outside of VR, you're going to get great performance. So that's that, guys. I just wanted to give you my comparison of the I-16 between IL-2 and DCS. And again, like I said, DCS has a lot of things over IL-2, but IL-2 has a lot of things over DCS as well. And it's all about what you're really looking for and what you want to achieve. So I hope I've been able to give you a fair comparison of the two. And oh, and I also wanted to mention, in both scenarios, in DCS and IL-2, the I-16 is a fantastic air-to-air and air-to-ground performer as well. They've modeled all the different weaponry in both. So again, it's just a matter of which platform you prefer. And right now, well, for the next couple days at least, the I-16 is still on free play until the 19th. I believe today is the 16th, so it's a couple more days. If I get this video posted up in the next day or so, you may have time to check it out for yourself. But also at the moment, the stuff over on the IL-2 store is still on sale as well for $12.50 for the regular version of Moscow, and then I believe like $20 for the premium that comes with both of the collector's planes that come with Moscow. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. That is my comparison of the I-16 between DCS and IL-2. I hope you've enjoyed this. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Feel free to hit that like button, and until next time, guys.